sorry, I'm a bitch. I rate everything 2 stars. Hi besties, it's Sarah. Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be doing a reading wrap up. I have not filmed a reading wrap up since 2018, and these used to be my favorite videos to film because I love talking about all the books that I've been reading and giving you my thoughts, but I haven't filmed one in so long because, as you know, I took a long sabbatical from uploading. I was only uploading like 5 times a year. It was a bad time, but as you know, I am Miss Consistent Queen now. I upload pretty much every week, and she's a new woman, so I wanted to resume reading wrap-ups. I've been doing reading vlogs, but I wanted to resume reading wrap-ups. I will say my new format is to do a lot of reading vlogs, so a lot of these books I've already talked about, but I thought it would also still be nice to do like a concise summary of everything I've been reading, because there are quite a few books that I have not talked about on my channel so far this year. And so some of the ones that I do cover in some vlogs, I will link those vlogs down below, and I'll probably only give you a very brief overview of what I thought in the plot. That rhymed. She's a poet and she didn't even know it. In my previous wrap-ups, I've always done it in order of reading, but because this wrap-up is covering pretty much all the books that I've read since January, I think I forgot to mention that at the beginning of this video, but this is going to be a really big wrap-up because I did so many reading vlogs that doing it on a monthly basis didn't really make sense. So I'm just kind of covering it as like a 3-month sort of thing. I don't know if I'm going to continue with that format or if I'm going to try to do more of a monthly thing. I don't know. Let me know your preference down below if you really care if it's a month-to-month thing, or if you don't mind if I just wait until I've done enough reading vlogs and have like a gap so that I can talk about it. Hopefully that makes sense. And so in this one, I'm going to do it by genre because I feel like I read heavily in certain genres, and I think it would just be an easier way to organize this. Let me know down below what your favorite ways to see wrap-ups are. I know Kayla from Books and Lola always does something creative. I think the last wrap-up she did it by like rating the first line of a book, which was interesting. And I've also seen, I think it was Hardback Hoarder, I saw her do a video where I think she did it by rating. But let me know down below what you prefer. Like, do you prefer reading order, rating, genre? Like, how should I group them? But anyway, I don't know. I didn't ask anybody, so I'm just gonna do it by genre. But yeah, let's just get into it. I feel like I am reigniting the old school booktuber within, and I don't know, it just feels really nice to be doing a classic wrap-up. So the first genre that we're going to be doing is thriller/mystery. I think I've read about 6 or 7 books in this category. I actually do want to read more, but I've been doing a lot of themed vlogs. I feel like I'm really talking a lot about how many vlogs I'm doing in this video, so let's just get more focused on the wrap-up. But anyway, the first book in this genre is one that I actually haven't mentioned on my channel because this is the first book of the year that I read. I think I started it at the very end of December and then I finished it the first week of the year, and that is The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. I really regret reading this because it was on so many people's worst of last year lists and I didn't listen to them. I wanted to read it because I've been reading a lot of Grady Hendrix books and I'm a completionist, and I wanted to read all of his work. This book relies heavily on the final girl trope, meaning our characters are women that were in some sort of like murder situation where all of their friends die and then they're the last one to survive. It's a trope based on like slasher movies, and so all of our characters are based on different fictional characters from movies, but they're real in the book. I'm not doing a good job of explaining this, but basically our main character, I think that she's supposed to be from Halloween. I don't know. I will say that was a little bit distracting when I was reading because I knew that about the characters, so I kept thinking to myself, being like, okay, so that character's from Nightmare on Elm Street and that character's from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it was just confusing. My biggest complaint about this book is there was way too many characters. Like, I couldn't keep them straight. Like, even the main character, Lynn, oh no, she was based on like a Christmas horror movie that I'd actually never seen. I couldn't figure it out. I don't know. I am doing an awful job explaining this book, but I don't think it really matters because I didn't like this book. I gave it 2 stars and I wouldn't recommend it. There were just far too many characters and I couldn't keep them apart. There was nothing unique to be had. Like, I feel like I spent half the book wanting more backstory on every single character and not getting it. I kind of wish it was almost written more like vignette style where we could like go back in the past and like see each girl's story. I feel like that would have been more interesting, and then it could have woven in to the real life current day situation. I don't know. I don't really care to continue to talk about this book because, like I said, 2 stars, don't recommend it, don't pick it up. Grady Hendrix's worst book. So not for me. Next up, we have The Good Son by You-Jeong. This is a book that I read for Create-a-thon. If you want my really in-depth thoughts, I will link that vlog down below. But to give you a brief synopsis, it is about this character named Yoo-Jeong who has some sort of ailment that causes him to take a medication that he really hates taking because it always makes him feel very foggy. It makes him have tinnitus in his ears. He just doesn't feel well when he takes his medicine. So every once in a while he likes to go off of his medicine. But unfortunately that will cause him to have seizures and sometimes have memory loss. And so in the beginning of the novel, he wakes up covered in blood and he finds his mother dead in the living room, and he has to figure out if he has murdered her or if someone else did it, and why is he covered in blood. Like, he has to just get his memory back. What I really liked about this book is that Yoo-Jeong is not a very reliable narrator, and I really liked his gray morality, and I thought it was really well written, and it was translated from Korean originally, and I just really enjoyed it, and I look forward to reading more from that author. I know there's one other book of his that is translated, and it was really good. Again, if you want more thoughts on it, I did do more of an in-depth analysis of it in that vlog. You can go ahead and watch that. The next one that we have is The Red Palace by June Hur. This is another book that I read for Create-a-thon. It is a historical fiction, I believe set in like the late 1700s, maybe mid 1700s, I don't fully remember. But our main character is a nurse and she works in the palace, and there is a group of women that end up getting massacred. And so her mentor, like the nurse that taught her how to be a nurse, ends up being accused of the murders, and so she takes it upon herself to try to solve them. I know that plot sounds interesting, and I was very interested too, but I really did not like that book. It was another 2-star book. Yes, it was. Very bad. Oh, and I forgot to say, I rated The Good Son 4 stars, so that was really good. This one, not so good. Not great. June Hur mostly writes YA, and so this was a YA book, and I knew that I shouldn't have picked it up because I don't like YA. I don't like YA, but I needed to read a historical fiction book for Create-a-thon. That was one of the challenges. And so I got this off of Monica's recommendations, and I don't think it's for me. I really don't like YA anymore. I'm so sorry, besties. Also, this is not trying to insult anyone who does still enjoy young adult. I just personally cannot relate to it. I don't like the writing style. Pretty much anytime a book is YA, it does not hit for me. I can't tell if it was just because it was YA or because the book was bad too. I just feel like I wasn't the right audience for it and didn't really enjoy it. Again, I talk about that more in the vlog if you want to hear more. Regardless, don't read it. 2 stars. The next book that we have is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This is another book that I read for a vlog. I did the vlog where I read all of BookTuber's favorite books of the year. This book is about a group of elderly friends who live together in a residential community. They really have an acute interest in true crime, and so they have something called the Thursday Murder Club, where every week they get together and they solve cold cases, and they just are all interested in that. All of them have some backgrounds that allow them to be able to kind of puzzle piece things together. And so in this particular book, which is the first in a series, there is a builder on site who's been building like an addition to the community that ends up being murdered, and so they take it upon themselves to solve it. A lot of the times they're sort of just interfering in the police investigation, and I liked the humor in this, and I liked the characters. I thought the elderly characters were very heartwarming, and I definitely could see myself maybe potentially picking up the sequel to this, but ultimately it kind of fell like middle of the road for me. I think I gave it like 3.5 stars, and again, I gave more thoughts on it in my vlog that I did. I'm just gonna honestly list every vlog down below. Also, if you took a shot every time I say the word vlog in this video, you would be very drunk even by now, and we're not even that far in. The next 3 books are 3 that I read from the same series, which is the Below Stairs series by Jennifer Ashley. A subscriber actually recommended this to me a long time ago because I really like Veronica Speedwell, and this is a cozy mystery set in the Victorian age in London, which is very similar to Veronica Speedwell, so I could see why they made that recommendation to me. And I gotta say, I liked these while I was reading them, but I have forgotten so much about them that I don't really know if they're like worth your time or even my time. Like, I don't know if I will continue in the series, but basically I read the first book, which is called Death Below Stairs, and our main character is a cook, and so she cooks for wealthy families in the area. She's kind of a prestigious chef cook person that people like to hire, and so she gets hired at this very wealthy family, and she's cooking for them, and her like assistant cook, like the girl that helps her, ends up being murdered, and so she uses all of her wits about her to try to solve it. And there's also this other character named Daniel. I actually don't remember her name. It's like Mrs. something. They always call her Mrs. something, and I don't remember what it is. But Daniel is this guy that she has like a history with, and he's always popping in and out, and he's always connected to stuff, and she doesn't know what he does for a living, and it's like this whole thing. And I know it's confusing me explaining it, but that's because I'm going off of my memory and I don't super remember it. I know in this first book that the girl gets murdered, and then there's like all this intrigue, like even with the government and like some like rebels, like Irish rebels or something. I don't know. It's Victorian London. She's a cook. I feel like that's all you really need to know. And then I followed up by reading the prequel novella. So I guess the way that Jennifer Ashley wrote this series is that she first wrote the novella and published it like in some sort of magazine or book of short stories, and people liked it enough that she decided to write a novel off of it. But something that I really didn't like about it is, so this character Daniel that keeps coming up, when you meet him in the first book, which is the first like full-fledged book, you don't really get to see how they know each other, and a lot of it's just based on things that you don't see. And so I don't normally read novellas, but I was like, you know what, I'm gonna pick this up because I really want to understand the backstory between this lady and Daniel. And so I picked up the novella, which I think is called a Soupçon of Poison. I don't know how to pronounce that word. I'll put it on the screen. I literally don't know how to pronounce it because it's got the little French squiggle. Soupçon? I don't know. In that one, she is cooking for a different family, and the master of the house ends up getting poisoned, and so she gets accused and like has to go to jail, and it's a whole thing, and Daniel ends up helping her. And so like that is kind of the precursor to how they meet later. But I honestly hated the novella. I think I gave the first book 3 stars, and then I gave the novella 2 stars. It just like didn't add anything to my experience. Also, I had to read it as an ebook because it wasn't that long, and I didn't want to like pay for the audiobook on Audible, so I was like, I'll just read it. So I like flew through it. I think it was like a little over 100 pages, and it was not worth my time, besties. And then the next book in the series, which was like book number 2, so we've got 0.5 on the novella, then 1, and then I read 2, but I read them 1.5 then 2. I am rambling so much in this video. But anyway, book number 2 I think is called Death Above Stairs, or something above stairs. Scandal Above Stairs, I think is what it's called. I really don't have a very good memory for this series. And in this one, she has like befriended the lady of the house where she's cooking from like the last book, and one of her friends gets accused of murder, and so she asks the cook lady to like help herself. I really wish I remembered the cook lady's name because she's literally the main character, but I just don't. I only remember Daniel's name, that's it. And so this one's more about the death involving like people of society, because they're like just like the employees, and so she's like going above ground to like above ground, as if they're like moles that live underground. No, but you know what I mean, like if you've seen Downton Abbey, like the help is downstairs and then all the like fancy like society people are upstairs. Anyway, so this one's more of like a society trying to solve it thing, and there's a little bit of like thievery in it. I don't know, I did draw a lot of similarities between these books and Veronica Speedwell, but Veronica Speedwell is just done so much better. So the moral of this ramble is that I don't think I'm going to continue this Below Stairs series. I think that it's just not super memorable. I can't even remember the cook's name, and the romance between Daniel and the lady, I guess I didn't even mention that they're like romantically involved, is just boring. Like I feel like Stoker and Veronica are just chef's kiss, and these characters, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. So I have no interest in continuing that series, but I did read 2 books and a novella. So there's that. The next genre we're going to talk about is nonfiction. I've read 2 nonfiction books so far this year. Both of them were for vlogs. If you're taking those shots, you're probably very drunk right now. And so the first book is You Can't Be Serious by Kal Penn. This is a memoir by obviously Kal Penn, who is a very famous actor. He was in that White Castle movie, Harold and Kumar, that one, and he was also in Van Wilder. This memoir is about him trying to break into the acting industry as a man of color, and it's a very interesting read. I again read this for like Booktuber's favorite books of the year. I know I already mentioned that vlog. I think it was Jenny's favorite book from The Story Ain't Over. So yeah, I really like that one. I gave it 4 stars. And then the next nonfiction I read was Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. I also read this for Koreadathon, and I really liked this. It made me cry so much. I wasn't necessarily crying in H Mart, but I was sobbing in my living room. And if you want to see me actually crying on camera, I will reference that vlog down below, like I've been saying. Literally, I'm telling you, the amount of times I said vlog in this video is disgusting. Crying in H Mart is specifically about the loss of Michelle Zauner's mother. She and her mother had a very interesting relationship, and they bonded a lot over Korean food. And so it's sort of about their relationship like through her teen years, and then when her mother gets sick when she's in her mid-20s, and how she goes home to take care of her mother when she's got cancer. It is a terribly sad book, and it's so special, and the writing is really good. Also gave that 4 stars, would really highly recommend that. The next genre we're going to talk about is horror, and as you guessed it, I do have a vlog for this. I read 3 horror books in a vlog, and then there's one that I read outside that vlog. So we'll talk first about the book that I have not spoken about on my channel yet, and that is Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. I've been really trying to get into my horror era, so that's why I kind of forced myself to read these 4 books. Although force myself is kind of bad wording, but I will say that I rated a lot of these books really low, so I don't think I've really found what kind of horror books I like. But Head Full of Ghosts is about this family that has an older daughter that they think is possessed. And so the story is told from the perspective of the younger sister, both in present day and when she was a kid, because all of this happened when she was a child. I think she was like 9 years old, don't quote me on that, but she was pretty young when it happened. And so she is talking to a reporter in the present day, and then we kind of go back in the story to when she was really young. So it's written in a really interesting way because you're kind of getting the limited perspective of a 9-year-old. But our main character, I believe her name is Mary, she loves her older sister. Like, her older sister is the best. It's her, like, her idol. But in recent times, she started to notice that her sister's been acting really weird, and her parents sort of imply that something is happening with her mental health. But through a series of events and their father sort of like finding Catholic religion, he decides that he believes that the older sister is possessed. And so it's kind of odd why this happens. I can't really explain it, but for some reason he thinks that the best way to help her is for them to be on a reality show where a priest will come and try to cure their daughter. And I think the idea is that he's kind of doing it for money, but also because he thinks that the exorcism might help his daughter. And so you kind of spend the whole book not being really sure if the older sister is actually possessed, or if she's just trying to scare everyone, or if she has schizophrenia. Like, there's a lot of different like possibilities that are kind of put out there. And I could tell that Paul Tremblay is like a decent author, but I thought that this book was just not executed very well. Like, I didn't enjoy it. Like I said, I enjoyed that there was like this limited perspective of a 9-year-old, because I kind of feel like that added to the suspense of the novel, because obviously a 9-year-old's can be really afraid of everything that's happening. The whole like reality show aspect was kind of weird to me, and I didn't really enjoy this overall. I ended up giving it 2 stars, which is very unfortunate. I gave a lot of books 2 stars so far this year, which is fine. It's fine. We know that I'm a critical rater. It's an affliction that I have. I have a hard time enjoying things. The next 3 books were ones that I read for a horror vlog. Again, I will link that down below. If you just like want to watch all my content, you should totally do it, especially if you want my more in-depth thoughts about all these books. But the first book was Hex by Thomas Olde Heuvelt, and this is about this town that is haunted by this black witch, and she's been haunting the town for hundreds of years. And so if you move to this town, you are no longer allowed to leave because you belong to the ghost. And so our main family in the story moved there like in the 90s, and they didn't realize that that's what was going to happen to them. So they're raising their sons in this town, and their oldest son is really getting tired of the restraints because he has a girlfriend from a neighboring town, and he really just wants to get out there and like live his life. So he basically ends up joining his friends in this attempt to kind of like reveal the witch to the world. And it's like this whole thing, and all hell breaks loose when they do this, because this witch is like this scary thing that's haunting. And what I liked about Thomas Olde Heuvelt's, that's like a long name, but what I liked about his writing is that he was kind of humorous in it, and so it was very interesting. But at the same time, the pacing was absolutely awful for that book. Like, it was really long. I think it was like well over 300 pages, and I think it could have done to be like 250 pages. Like, maybe we just like edit it back a little bit, because there were so many things that happened that I was just like, I don't know. And by the end of the book, I just didn't care. And I gave this 2 stars again. The next book was The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, and I actually did enjoy this one. This one was pretty good. This is about this group of friends who grew up together on a Native American reserve, and so they had like this big hunting thing that happened, and they end up being haunted by an elk, and it's like this big mysterious thing. And so present day, it's been 10 years since this mysterious hunting party, and there's like this elk goddess that's like hunting them down. It's very eerie, very creepy. And what I really liked about this is that Stephen Graham Jones is Native American, so a lot of it was very like own voices, and the Native American culture was really fascinating. And I really enjoyed this one. 4 stars. Really would recommend it if you've been thinking about reading that. And then the last book that I read for the vlog was No One Gets Out Alive by Adam Neville. This is a sort of haunted house story about this girl who's really down on her luck. She's got no money, and so she gets an opportunity to go live in this flat share situation where she pays for a room, and the house is haunted, and it ends up being a really bad situation for her. And like, the landlord is skeevy, and these ghosts are haunting her, and it kind of implied by the title, No One Gets Out Alive. That's the whole thing. That book also suffered from length. It was so long. It was like the Lord of the Rings of horror. Like, I was like, why is this book not over yet? I really did not enjoy it. I talked about that way more in depth in my video. I feel like a broken record in this video. I'm so sorry. I really need to figure out how to do these wrap-ups without repeating myself about vlog things, but I don't know, maybe like you guys let me know. Do you think that I should do these wrap-ups where I don't talk about any of the vlog videos and maybe I just wait until I have enough books that are not from vlogs? I don't know. Let me know. But also, not to be the bearer of bad news, but I did also give that book 2 stars. So the next genre we're going to talk about is fantasy, and I've actually only read 2 fantasy books so far this year, which is surprising because I normally like to read a lot of fantasy. I am trying to get into an adult fantasy era. There are a lot of eras that I'm trying to be in this year. I don't know if 2022 is long enough for all of them, but we're going to try. These 2 books are from the same series, and that is The Ryaria Revelations by Michael J. Sullivan. The first book, Theft of Swords, is, you guessed it, from a vlog. I read it because it was Life as Monet's favorite book of last year, or was one of her favorites of last year, and she just ranted and raved about it and made it sound really good. And like I said, I'm trying to read more adult fantasy, so I was like, all right, I'll pick that up. So in this series, we have our 2 main characters who are by trade thieves. They're giving like Ocean's 11 vibes, like they just put off heists. And so we've got Royce and Hadrian, and they are known as the Ryaria, and a lot of people all through the land like to hire them for very tricky jobs where they kind of like infiltrate and they steal things. Sometimes they kill people. It's a whole thing. And so in this first book, we have them getting into a scrape where they get framed for murdering the king of a land. And so then they, through a series of events, have to kidnap the prince to take him to this place and kind of convince him that they didn't kill his father. And it's like a whole journey. And the interesting thing about Theft of Swords, it's actually a bind-up of the first 2 books because originally Michael J. Sullivan self-published these, and so there's actually 6 books, but then they did like 3 different bind-ups. So in Theft of Swords, we've got that first one, which is the Crown Conspiracy, and then the second one, I don't really remember what the second part is called, but in that one, after we've gone on a whole journey with the prince and the kidnapping and whatever, the second one is about them going to this small village because this girl seeks them out, and she's like, there's like this weird monster that's like haunting the village, like could you guys come and like slay it? That would be really like cute and fun if you would like come do that for us so we could all like live, laugh, love. And so they go to this small town to kind of defeat this dragon thing, and then there ends up being like this game situation where like all the politics intrigue is very interesting because they're looking for like this long lost emperor descendant thing, and so there's like this trial thing that happens to try to kill the beast, and then like, they're gonna like find the new emperor through that. I'm doing a terrible job of explaining it, but just know that it's fantasy and that it's really easy to get into because the fantasy elements are a little bit lighter, because in this world like wizards and magic do exist, but they're very far off in the past, and so there's elves and whatnot, but ultimately like actual like magic being practiced is been like lost over time, and so there's not like a huge magic system to try to understand. It's very light on that, and it's more like heavy on the adventure and the characters. And so that first book, that first bind up, I rated 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. Fantastic, amazing. I actually do own it. I wish I was holding it up right now. I'm new to owning books, so I feel like I'm used to just like editing in the cover, and so I have to remember moving forward to hold up books like if I actually own them. But I do own the trilogy, like all the bind-ups. The next bind-up was called Rise of Empire, and I'm gonna get front. This one kind of blends together for me. I don't really remember this cut between the 2 books. I just know that in this one we're getting a lot more backstory on all of the characters. There is a princess that was in the first 2 books that ends up leaving her kingdom because she is like a messenger for her brother. Her brother is the one that got kidnapped in the very first book, and so she goes off to this like small town and she like leads a rebellion. It's like this whole thing. And then Royce and Hadrian, I think in the second part of the bind up, they go on a boat, like a little pirate situation, and they are like masquerading as like seamen. I feel like you can't say seamen without like thinking like the other seamen, but you know what I mean. They're like on a boat. I am literally garbage rat at explaining this series, but they all kind of blend together. But I want to say that I also gave the second bind up 5 stars, and this is one that I did not read for a vlog, but I really enjoyed it. And let me tell you, if you read Theft of Swords and Rise of Empire and you don't end up liking them and you rate them low, you know why? You know why? It's because you didn't listen to the dramatized cast of the audiobook. If you go and watch my vlog where I read the first bind up in like the booktubers favorites, you will see I actually like played a clip of the audiobook. It was so good. It just, they like do sound effects and there's different voices for every single character, and it's just, it's so good. It's so good. I cannot recommend it. I just tried to say the word recommend and I had an aneurysm. I cannot recommend it enough. And the final category is the one that I have the most books from. and that is classics. I have really been a classics girly. I've read so many classics this year. It all started with Ariel Bissett saying that Anne of Green Gables was one of our favorite books of last year, because it was from that like Booktuber's favorite books blog that I keep mentioning, but I'm trying not to say the word blog anymore. And it just took off from there. Anne of Green Gables is actually a series, which I did not know. And so there's multiple books to be read. So I read the first 4 books of that series. I'm actually gonna get them off my shelf because I was just complaining about not holding up books, so please hold. So it is an 8-book series, and I've already read the first 4. So in this series, we have our titular character, Anne, and she is an orphan. And so there is this brother and sister who own a farm, Matthew and Marilla, and they set out to adopt a boy who can come help them on the farm. But there's a mix-up at the orphanage, and they end up sending Anne instead. And then they meet Anne, they're very charmed by her, so they feel like they can't turn her away. So they agree to raise her even though she can't really help them on the farm. And what I love about this series is that it's so heartwarming, it's so wholesome. It will just make your heart tingle. I've never seen the Netflix show Anne with an E, but I've also heard that about the Netflix show. It's just so good. Anne is just so adorable. This book probably takes place between when she's 11 all the way through her like mid-teens, I think, and she makes so many friends in the town of Avonlea, and it's so heartwarming, and I love it so much. I also absolutely love this box set that I bought. Like, these covers are fantastic, love them so much. If you want to see more thoughts about this book in particular, you can go watch that vlog. I do cry in it. This book made me cry. So the next book in the series is Anne of Avonlea, and this is Anne's like mid-teen years, and she becomes the school teacher in Avonlea, and so it's all about her being the school teacher and her kind of growing up with her friends and like becoming a young woman, and it's very cute, it's very heartwarming. I will say I have a hard time always remembering what happens in each book because I kind of think of the series as like one continuous experience, but I know that this one is specifically when she is the school teacher because she really wanted to go to college, but something happened in the first book that kind of made it like financially not possible for her, so she stays home with them on the farm, and it's like a whole thing. The third book in the series is Anne of the Island, and this is when Anne finally does get to go to college. She comes into some money, and so she gets an opportunity to go move away from Avonlea and go to college for the first time. So this is about, I think it's like 2 years of her being at college. There's a little bit of romance in this one, and she makes a lot of friends while she's at college, and I really, really like this one as well. The fourth book in the series is Anne of Windy Poplars. This is my absolute favorite cover in the box set that I got. I just love the wind, I love the umbrella, everything about this is so beautiful. Her hair, her flowing red hair, and they get it like windy poplars, it's windy, it's a whole thing. In this book we have Anne moving to Summerside to be the school teacher there, and she ends up moving in with these 2 elderly widows, Aunt Kate and Aunt Chatty. I had to like remember the names from the back, and then they have a housekeeper named Rebecca Dew, and so they're very quirky characters, and so Anne just like loves living with them, and she just like gets into a bunch of, you know, little situations in this little town. Something you need to know about Anne in all of these books that she tries to help people, and so sometimes she meddles a little bit and things go wrong, and so Anne just always gets herself into a little bit of trouble. So this is probably my least favorite in the series. I rated all the other ones like 5 stars, but I would probably rate this one like 4 or 4.5 stars. It just gets a little bit repetitive. This one is written through letters. She's writing to a character from one of the other books in it, like kind of letting them know about everything she's gotten up to, and I don't know, it just didn't really work for me, and a lot of the characters in this end up seeming very similar to one another. I will say though, one of my favorite lines is in this book. There is a character that Anne befriends who's very grumpy, and she does not want to get married, and so she actually says a line where she's like, well, I'm not interested in getting married, I hate men. Like, she literally says, I hate men. What I love about this series is that I feel like Ellen Montgomery was really ahead of her time. Like, there's a lot of like female strength in these books, like the fact that Anne goes to college and really cares about studying, and there are characters in the book that are always like, why are you gonna do that? You're just gonna get married and be like a wife. But she just really cares about being a smart little girly, and she's really interested in being a school teacher, and I just feel like she's very bold. She's just a character that you can't help but love, and I feel like Ellen Montgomery does a lot of observation about like what it means to be like an unmarried woman. There's a lot of characters like Marilla specifically, which is the woman that raised Anne. She's not married and she has no qualms about not being married, and then like I said, there was the character that said she hated men, and there's just a lot of characters that are like, you know what, marriage isn't for me, and I feel like for this time period that's actually like pretty forward thinking. And so yeah, I love these books so much. I feel like I'm not doing them justice in how I'm talking about them, but I just love them so much. These next 6 books will be no surprise to you if you've been watching my videos, but I have all 6 Jane Austen novels. I read these all over the course of March, and it took me a while, besties. It really did. First, we have Mansfield Park, which is a story about a girl named Fanny Price falling in love with her cousin. I'm gonna give you very simple explanations of these because I literally talked about them at nauseum in the video that I did. So if you really want to see my in-depth thoughts and more of the summaries about these books, go watch it. There's 6 to be talked about. Fanny Price gets adopted by her rich aunt, falls in love with her cousin, gross, 1 star. Then we have Persuasion. It's about this girl named Anne who has a second chance romance with this guy named Captain Wentworth, and she's a little bit older in life. She's in her late 20s. 5 stars, absolutely love this one. Then we have Pride and Prejudice, which I think we all know the story of Mr. Darcy and Lizzie Bennet, but basically it's a like hate to love situation where they have like a misunderstanding when they first meet because Mr. Darcy basically calls Lizzie ugly, and then through a series of events they end up falling in love. Very romantic. We love to see it. If you've seen the Keira Knightley adaptation, you know. Then we have Northanger Abbey, which is a gothic parody novel. This is one that I feel like people aren't as familiar with. This is about a girl named Catherine who ends up being invited to go stay at an abbey, and she lets her imagination run away from her, and she like thinks that some weird things are happening at this abbey, and so she tries to explore it, and there's a lot of like intrigue and different romance and characters, and I would say that this is probably one of Jane Austen's funnier novels. This has just so much humor. I loved the characters. I also loved her like examination of men and women in this time period, and I love that men have literally never changed. They will mansplain and be the worst, and they do that in this book. Then we have Sense and Sensibility. This is about 2 sisters, Eleanor and Marianne. Eleanor is very sensible and responsible. She's the older sister, and then Marianne is very young and free-spirited and kind of does whatever she wants. There's a little bit of an age gap romance in this, and then like a friends to lovers situation. It's very good. There is, the age gap is a little bit weird because she's like 17 and he is in his mid-30s, but you know, it's a different time back then. Different time. Still really liked this. I think I gave this 4 stars. Oh, and I also gave Northanger Abbey 4 stars. And Pride and Prejudice 4 stars. I kind of stopped saying the star ratings. And then we have Emma, which is about a character named Emma who's very rich and spoiled and always thinks she's right, and she decides that she is a matchmaker and she wants to match everyone up all around town, but again, she's wrong about everything, so she kind of messes things up, and it's all very dramatic. And there's another age gap romance in this that's also kind of weird, but again, different time with the cousin loving and the age gapping. It's all different, and you know what, we all still live, laugh, love while we read Jane Austen. But this one also very good. Got a little convoluted towards the end, wasn't my favorite, but also 4 stars. But this brings us to the end of this reading wrap up. I think I did a horrendous job talking about all these books, but you know, we're trying to get back in the rhythm, back in the habit. We don't really know how to do wrap ups anymore, so we're doing our best. And let me know down below what format you would like of this. If you don't want me to talk about books that are in vlogs, if you do want me to. I kind of thought this would be a good place to kind of recap everything in case you missed some of those vlogs and maybe, you know, intrigue you in watching those. But anyway, I'm done talking. I'm tired of talking. I want to go take my makeup off. It's a whole thing. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day.